I feel like I should preface this by saying I really don't care for football. It's the brutality for me that I just can't see past. But there's a young football fan in my life whom I love very much, so I find myself stuck between discouraging him from wanting to play such a sport and wanting to indulge all his interests. And that's what brought us to the football bracelet. I'm using fabric scraps that you might recognize from the gourd skirt video that I recently did and cutting 2 football shapes out of it. I'm also cutting the same shape out of some batting. I used tailor's chalk to mark the white stitches of a football, and then I laid that on top of my batting piece and top stitched those lines in place. I used a top stitch needle and top stitch thread for this because I really do feel like it makes a difference. The thread is a bit thicker, and the needle, I think, is a bit thicker as well, so it makes the hole in the fabric thicker, and everything just looks more neat and visible. It's worth changing out your needle, in my opinion. Next, I found some elastic and sandwiched it between the batting and fabric piece that I'd sewn together and the other remaining fabric piece, so that one end of the elastic was just above the pointy part and the other end of the elastic was just below the other pointy part, with plenty of ease in between, enough to fit around a wrist. I then brought that over to my sewing machine and sewed around the edge through both layers of fabric and the layer of batting, but left about a 1/2 inch gap. I trimmed my seam allowances and then turned the football right sides out. I used my favorite non-sewing sewing tool, a mechanical pencil with the lead not popped out, to push out my corners and make things nice and neat. I then used my fingers to press in the seam allowances where that gap was, trying to keep a consistent curve with the part that was sewn. I swapped out my top stitch thread for some matching thread and sewed 1/8 of an inch from the edge all the way around. You could obviously sub out the football for any shape, letter, number, character, whatever. But if you were doing something that was a lot more complicated than a football shape, I would recommend sewing wrong sides together and leaving the edges raw or doing a zigzag stitch over them, because with more complicated shapes, it can be a lot harder to turn right sides out.